Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome back to another video. The clock is counting down as we get closer and closer to the playoffs, and Brandon and I are at the edge of our seats as we ask ourselves many questions. But one of them is our starting lineup of pitchers and who would probably start, the lineup of the playoffs. So here's that question for the day. And Brandon, I'm going to toss it over to you. You and I have had this conversation. We've narrowed it down to a few pitchers here, but I'm going to get your thoughts first on this.
Yeah, so the overarching conversation started because the Cubs have quite a few starting pitchers when everyone's healthy, which has been a big, sort of stipulation this year.
When
But
is that?
people are starting to get healthy. And so, the question was, who are the four in the rotation, the playoff rotation? It seems to me at this point that's pretty set in stone. It's going to be Matthew Boyd, Shota Imanaga, Cade Horton, and then if he's healthy, Jamison Tyone. That seems to be the four guys who are going to be in that playoff rotation. But besides Tyone, who's probably locked in as that fourth starter, who's going to start game one? Who's the ace of those, of that big three, if you can call it that, in Chicago right now? And, I know the guy you're going to go for. I think most people do at this point, but I'll make a case quickly for Matthew Boyd, who has been excellent for the Cubs this year. He's really what a tremendous signing he's been. It's hard to overstate the quality that he's given the Cubs. He really quickly I'll rattle this off, but he leads the team in innings pitched. He leads the team in FIP, in F4, yeah, at least for the starting staff. He's second to Ben Brown in strikeout rate amongst starting pitchers. He's just been tremendous. It's hard to overstate how good he's been for the Cubs and how valuable he's been for the Cubs this year. But that being said, he hasn't been great recently. In his last five starts in August, he allowed 18 runs in about 29 innings, which came out to about a 5.6 ERA. That's certainly not the kind of guy, we've had, concerns about this all year, Ethan, where we've talked about Matthew Boyd has had injuries in the past. He hasn't had to deal with a full starter's workload in quite some time. Now that he's doing it, he's sort of petering off at this point. Is he tired? Naturally he'd be fatigued. He hasn't dealt with this kind of workload in like half a decade. So that certainly calls for concern. But I think if he rights the ship, if he sort of gets back to who he was in the first half when he was an all-star, he's probably going to be the choice for the game one starter.
Yeah, I think it's not a bad choice to I don't want to say choice. It's not a bad theory to say that he's going to be the starter. It's not going to be my choice personally, but all numbers probably point to him. I'm
Mhm.
going to shout out the person that if you've watched our videos for as long as we've worked for Northside Baseball, you know what my pick is going to be. It will be our boy from Japan, Shota Imanaga. And my reasoning for it is, if any of our pitchers were to step up to the mound and you want a strikeout pitcher, it's Shota at the end of the day. Sure, if you picked people like Cade Horton, if you pick people like Matthew Boyd, if you wanted any good defenseman, you'd pick them. But if you want a clear strikeout pitcher to any of the, I don't want to say big major teams like the Brewers, like the Yankees, like the Red Sox, you put Shota Imanaga on the mound. If you look at our past games, like the Dodgers, that's the pitcher that the front office is choosing to go up against these heavy hitters like Aaron Judge, like Shohei Ohtani. It's not these other pitchers. So I think it's also dependent on who is in the playoffs and who,
Mhm.
if we, end up in the World Series, hopefully, who ends up in the World Series. But I think it's also dependent on who we're playing in the first game of the playoffs. And that's kind of my argument of would they bring Shota onto the mound? Again, that's a complete theory of mine here. And is it the best argument? No. Is it a fan argument? Absolutely. And I'm going to stick by it.
Yeah, no, he's probably the default choice, right? I mean, he was, he's sort of back in opening day. The question wasn't Matthew Boyd or Cade Horton; it was Shota Imanaga or Justin Steele. Obviously, Justin Steele's been out for the whole year. That leaves Shota Imanaga as like sort of the unquestioned ace on the team. Obviously, we're questioning it, but he's definitely the default choice. I think he's been great this year. He leads the team in batting average allowed and WHIP. I mean, in walk rate, like you said, he's the guy that, like if you need the safe choice, the guy who is going to show up for the big moment, it's probably Shota Imanaga. And that can't be discounted in the first game of the playoffs for the Cubs in 5 years. I mean, that's going to be a big stage, especially if it's at Wrigley Field. So I don't hate that choice either. I'm going to make now the case for the last player on this list who is actually my preferred choice. I think Boyd is going to be the answer, which is why I started with him. But my personal choice is Cade Horton. He's a rookie. obviously there's an innings limit on him. There's a lot of reasons to say the moment, he's not the right call. But Cade Horton has been really, really good recently. He leads the all starting pitchers on the team in ERA, in ground ball rate, in home runs allowed per 9 innings. He's been tremendous, and he's been like really tremendous in the second half. He's got a 0.86 ERA in 42 innings since the All-Star break. That is as good of a stretch as we've seen from a Cubs pitcher since Jake Arrieta 10 years ago. And, Cubs fans might remember Jake Arrieta 10 years ago started game one of the playoffs, which was the wild card against the Pirates, and he threw a complete game shutout. This is the kind of hot stretch for a pitcher that you want to ride in the postseason. The postseason is all about who gets hot at the right time. Cade Horton is hot right now. If he keeps this up through September and the innings limit isn't it's not really weighing on his arm, I think he's got to be the choice. He's the hottest pitcher on the team. He's probably the most just raw talented pitcher on the team, although that doesn't really matter. But it's just, I think, putting a rookie out there in game one of the playoffs, potentially in front of a raucous Wrigley Field crowd is really risky, especially because it looks like the Cubs are going to go to the wild card series. That's best of three. So that means if you lose 2 games, that's it. And whoever starts game one of the playoffs is going to face the other team's ace. They're going to face the other team's best pitcher. So if you're wrong about this, you're going to go down in an 0-1 hole.
Yeah.
That being said, I think Cade Horton is really good, and he's really, really been on fire recently. If he keeps this up through September, he'd be my personal choice.
I think at the end of the day, it kind of goes to the argument of risk v reward versus safety. And to me personally, just following the Cubs for the past few years, I'm gonna go with safety. And I think that's most people's opinion at this point. Just following the Cubs track record, but I think there is an excitement that goes with risk, and I'm not going to argue with you in that sense. I agree with you that risk is really interesting, but Brandon, I would love for us to have a World Series ring on most of our players' fingers. Thank you very much. So I'm just going to say I would like to say with safety. What are your thoughts, though, down in the comments? We'd love to hear. Are you willing to go with the risk of Cade Horton? Would you love to go with safety with Shota Imanaga or somebody like Matthew Boyd? Let us know in the comments below. I think you know the right answer, but, maybe you're crazy like Brandon.